Good evening, everyone. A very welcome you all to this remarkable session in 16 Days of Action Against Gender-Based Violence webinar series organized by International Youth Alliance for Peace. Once again, I'm Hassan, an undergraduate at University of Colombo and today's moderator for the evening. Let me quickly go through what IYAP is about. The International Youth Alliance for Peace is a dynamic youth-led organization committed to promoting sustainable peace, human rights, and community empowerment. With initiatives spanning over a decade, IYAP has been an instrumental in amplifying young voices and driving transformative change across Sri Lanka and beyond. So let me welcome today's participants for the evening. We value your presence here as it affirms the importance of collective action in addressing gender-based violence. So thank you for being a part of this collective journey. It is also my honor to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guest speaker for today, Dr. Dayani Sumitra Panagada is an accomplished legal professional with significant expertise in law, policy analysis, and organizational development. Dr. Panagada has represented Sri Lanka at various international forums, including NESA Regional Network, where she addressed the impacts of small arms on peace and security and participated in counter-terrorism workshops. Notably, Dr. Panagada served as team leader for the policy unit in Sri Lanka, collaborating with multiple ministries on key policy issues related to reconciliation and social cohesion. As a senior lecturer at General Sir John Kothawala Defence University, Dr. Panagada played a pivotal role in curriculum development and student evaluation in law. Her dedication to women's peace and security earned her the NPeace Award in 2019. In addition to her professional accomplishments, she brings skills in public speaking, workshop facilitation, and monitoring and evaluation. Dr. Panagada also has a strong background in sports, having excelled in netball and athletics during her educational journey. Her diverse expertise and commitment to strengthening civil society highlight her impactful career. I welcome Dr. Panagada to today's session. Before moving on to the session, I'll quickly walk through you today's session. So we'll begin with Dr. Panagada's valuable session, and then we'll be opening Q&A session, Q&A flow to our audience, and then we conclude with acknowledgements after taking a group photo. So now, without further ado, it's time to hear from my esteemed guest, Dr. Panagada. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you very much. And good evening to all of you. And first and foremost, thank you to IYAP, the team IYAP for inviting me for this session. And I know it's kind of a time that we all would love to cuddle in the on the bed and getting ready for the to rest and then get ready for the next day's work. However, it also demands that there are certain things that we need to also learn and understand and engage. So therefore, that we have a little time, like about 50 minutes to discuss about legal protection and policy advocacy for women's safety. Because I think one thing that I strongly believe that women's security is been very important, and it has been an important area that most of the governments in the world is focusing now. And as you all know, the UN and every other government is also leading this 16-day activism on women's safety, and also kind of creating awareness on sexual and gender-based violence. It's around the world, it's happening everywhere. So that means that it is still happening. And if it is still happening, then what do we do? How do we curb it? How do we minimize it? And how do we ensure that those who are being abused, being what kind of support that we can give? So I will go through for a kind of a presentation where that you will sort of get to understand the essence of it, and then we'll get into a discussion as to give me 1 second. I just want to minimize this. Yeah. So we will discuss as to how yeah, it's good now. So what legal, one of the questions is that posed to me from the moderator is that what legal reforms are most needed to ensure better protection for women? I think one of the best ways to do is to localize all the international standards and have local laws in terms of working towards a better before we go to reforms, if I may say that it is also important to understand that we do in Sri Lanka as a case study, if you see that we do have laws and we do need to reform in certain places, and especially now that we are working towards or legal reforms in a big way, because some of these provisions against sexual and gender-based violence against women are very old dated. Therefore, it has been already started. But 3 key areas that I would like to refer here is the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, where it's because we all believe that every woman shall be entitled to women's rights and no woman shall be denied such rights. Therefore, Universal Declaration on Human Rights is one of the tools that we use in terms of promoting and working on policy development, legal reforms to ensure protection for women. And this is not only there are 2 areas where that you need to also remember. One is the peacetime, and one is the other one is when there is a humanitarian crisis. That humanitarian crisis can also be man-made humanitarian crisis, such as wars, insurgencies, but also disasters like environmental disasters like floods, tsunamis, droughts, where that we believe that most of the time women are being the most affected, women and especially girls. And therefore, it is important to see that their rights are being upheld and that they have equality in dignity as human beings, as like men, and also rights and freedoms without any distinction, including distinctions based on gender. So if you look at broadly, Universal Declaration of Human Rights gives us that understanding. And then second one is the Constitution of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka recognizes special provisions being made by law, subordinate legislation or executive action for the advancement of women. Because although the chapter on fundamental rights, which starts from chapter 10 to Article 10 to 15, it speaks about fundamental rights, and there also says women's rights, meaning that if you are working towards advancement of women, it's not a violation of human rights of men. So the Constitution also gives us that kind of approach. And then if we are in future to do any constitutional changes, amendments, or bringing a new constitution, I think it is important that we, the civil society and the academia, emphasize the needs of these special recognitions, special provisions, and also get these other subordinated legislations to be in place so that women's rights are being protected all times, right? And the third one is there is this, with all the previous efforts made by various women's activists and through the activism and also various organizations, we have reached up to the Women Empowerment Act of number 37 of 2024. And you may have remembered. If you don't, please Google, and you can understand that there were lots of discussions were going on, went around with this Women Empowerment Act, saying that why some people were asking as to why you need special provisions for women, and also, but why actually this act was brought before the at this time, and especially when there is an economic crisis, and also when the women were suffering a lot, it was important that women empowerment is one of the key areas that the previous governments have seen. But at the same time, we did not do much of it, but we saw the sufferings through the COVID as well as the economic crisis. So bringing effectiveness to all these mechanisms that have been already there, like Women Committee, National Committee on Women in 1993 was established, but then it needed more teeth in terms of giving some effects to the provisions of the Act, of these organizations, institutions to work on progressive way to sort of minimize the suffering of women in terms of sexual and gender-based violence and other forms of violence, and also other forms of kind of rights being denied. So there are a couple of objectives. I'm not going to go into detail of these objectives, but in a nutshell, if you look at these objectives of the Act, it encourages one thing that you need to emphasize is that it encourages to revision of laws and procedures, and to ensure equal wages between men and women engaged in employment with equal values. And so that is one of the things that we see that is coming, keep coming in of these women's wages, apart from other issues such as having mechanisms to ensure women's rights, and also having kind of formulate national policies, and also establish the ombuds in order to hear the issues that women are facing, and also to promote resilience and ensure equality in terms of services through justice systems. And the another one is in terms of education and other programs where you give support to women. So this is something that we all need to understand in terms of when you do reforms, what kind of approaches that you have to do. My personal take is that we have enough and more policies and the laws, but reforms in terms of what we need basically is implementation and the commitment to implementation. So that leads to the second question, which is about how can governments strengthen policies to prevent violence against women? I mean, I can in a nutshell say that will and commitment. All what we need to do is to have a will and commitment in terms of prevent violence against women, because violence against women happens on a daily basis. and in almost all societies in Sri Lanka, and especially when it comes to the estate sector or when it comes to the labor sector, it happens quite often, certain violence against women. So it is important, one thing that government should take initiatives in terms of building the capacity of judicial, law enforcement, and government institutions. What does that mean? So the judiciary, the judges should understand these cases, how to deal with these cases, and also the law enforcement officers like the police and the Attorney General Department also needs to be aware. And also, to my understanding, I know that there is a special kind of a section in the Attorney General's department in terms of working towards violence against women, and also working on child rights and women's rights. So the government institution, when we go to government institutions, where do the women gets mostly being harassed or that their human rights are being violated? It's not necessarily, it has to be that violence. When you say violence, this is physical, but also sexual and kind of verbal and abuses are also amount to. So that is where that mostly, that when you go to the police, when you go to the Pradeshya Sabha or the district secretaries or provincial councils, how does it happen? And also building capacity, I also believe that it is important that we build capacities of the lawyers from both sides, not only from the Attorney General's department, but also from the private bar. Because my understanding and my recent work that we do on gender justice legal network that we are creating, where we see that most of the lawyers do not take up cases when that they would like to go with the perpetrator than protecting the woman, because perpetrator is the one who is having money, whereas the woman who is being abused is not having that much of money, or that she is scared to come to courts, and she's been threatened by both the lawyer as well as the police, and taking the side of the perpetrator, mostly either the husband or the sort of or the job provider, or somebody whom you are working under, or if you, or maybe even your partner. So this is where that we currently do quite a lot of work with promoting gender justice networks and taking up certain lawyers to take up pro bono cases, meaning that they voluntarily be there for the women so that they can take up these cases, but there will be a shadow organization who will be giving money for the lawyers to otherwise they don't get any money from the women, because women don't have A, money, B, that women, if the women, most of the time these women who gets abused are the ones who are dependent on their husband, so that they cannot ask money from the husband who is the perpetrator, on behalf of giving it to the lawyer who is acting against the husband. So these are the things, these are the predicaments that these women are going through. Therefore, when we do any policy reforms or legal reforms, we need to understand how we work with. And one of the institutions we have earmarked is that the Legal Aid Commission. The lawyers from the Legal Aid Commission can actually come forward and take up these cases. Currently, they don't do much, but I think that is something that in Sri Lanka we should do. And also, the second one is formal duty bearers such as police, judicial, and the government ministry personnel must be equipped to implement new laws and policies regarding SJBV prevention effectively. So we need to keep working with them, updating them, and also collecting data and share these data, saying that this many cases are pending or this many cases are being reported. So that's how that the government can be proactive. And also CSOs like IYAP or many other organizations, and especially there are women's organizations, they play an essential role in kind of shifting the minds of these institutions, the government institutions, and building capacities of them. Now, not only that they stop their work there, but go to the society, go and create awareness among public in a formal and informal manner, and to explain to them and work with the families, work with the schools, work with various organizations and also institutions like the private sector. Like I know, for example, MAs, he's always doing capacity building of the supervisors and also working with them, creating awareness on sexual and gender-based violence and the repercussions that they face after that, and also the laws and also the policies and also the standards, international standards and ethical standards, because if you report such cases, that your chances of getting your products rejected is high. So that is why ethical and fair trading, these are some of the tools that the people can use from the private sector as well as the government. So I would, though that the question is government, I would also go towards the private sector and also towards the individuals in strengthening these policies to prevent the violence against women. Then we come with that is what role does the justice system play in supporting survivors of gender-based violence? Actually, justice system has a big role to play, because but one thing that what we are saying here is, remember, if and only if these women go seek justice. So we keep in mind that 60% of the women are actually not going seeking justice. Because they are scared of the perpetrator, because most of the time perpetrates somebody who is closer to you, either the husband or a partner or a colleague or somebody, so that they are scared and then they don't have resources. And thirdly, they also have to, even if you go report, go to the police, then you have to come back to the same house and live with the person who had been already abusing you. So the safe houses, it is important to have safe houses and all of that. So all this comes is, if the woman go and seek justice through the justice system, then they have a big role to play in terms of survivors of gender-based violence. And one thing that they need to do is to bridge gaps between the formal laws, policies, and formal systems at the community level. As I said, in Sri Lanka, we only have few safe houses, and we do not have separate courts to work with the women and gender-based violence. So it is open court in the district court, so or the magistrate court, and then it is therefore women doesn't want to go, and they get humiliated openly, because there are very intimate questions that they will be asking when you are doing the cross-examination. So women are kind of, the system right now is not survivor friendly or women centered. So that is why that with the new act, there is a proposal that to have separate courthouses, or at least time or a day that you separately deal with the with these kind of cases. And then, so that is where that you need to work. So our take is that it cannot be done by the government or the justice system alone. It has to be done with the civil society, with the academia, because you need research, you need resources, you need many people who gets involved in terms of bringing these women and girls to the to the forefront, and let them seek justice, because we assure them safe and secure environment. And they will be safe and secure after that they come out from their misery and tell their story to the judicial system, right? So otherwise, what happens is they always face the both individual and structural barriers to accessing justice, and this creates a risk for further abuse. And that is why, very recently I was doing the violent and conflict assessment for USAID, and I was in the estate sector talking to various women on this issue, and most of the one of the biggest issue in the estate sector was on gender-based violence mostly by their partners or the husbands. So it's kind of endemic. Therefore, we need to focus more on that work. And especially when I say that it is peacetime, it is more. And then it is, if it is wartime, if it is emergency, insurgency times, then you have to work double the amount. And also now that we are also in a post-conflict situation in Sri Lanka, we also need to work on transitional justice, accountability, and conflict-affected settings in terms of how you manage the gender-based violence committed, and also the survivors are there, how you work with the survivors. That doesn't mean that 30 years after the incident that you come and work with the women, but also keep working with these women on a constant basis to ensure that, give them that assurance that they are safe and secure in these settings. Then it comes to how can we ensure laws are effectively enforced to protect women's rights. This is the biggest challenge we have in Sri Lanka. And there are no no way to measure, although the mechanisms are there, that mechanisms are not very effective. So that is why the at 2024 Act is working on, and to establish because policy is in place, and implementation of the law is very important in this. It is the implementation of law that is very important, and it has to be impartial, and it has to be gender sensitive, and also it has to be kind of all-inclusive package. It is not that you just get the woman to courts and hear her case, but also to look into if the woman who comes to courts has children, then what are you going to do with the children? How are you going protecting the children? Are you asking the woman to come with the children? If the children are young children, are you asking them to come with the children to go to the safe house? Do we have enough safe houses? So all that has to be, it's a package. It's not that two persons go to courts and say, okay, he invaded to my property, therefore we need to make sure that we do another survey and to see that who owns how much of the purchase of that land. It's not that. It is not that easy. Or if it is a criminal case like murder, then the Attorney General Department will take necessary actions. They initiate everything. Here it is a different story entirely, up to the woman who gets abused, who gets who being affected, has to come to the courts, has to go to the police station. So how much, even though you have too many policies and the laws are there, implementation is very crucial, and implementation is very sensitive. So that is why in the 1993, there was this National Committee on Women to implement and direct the provisions of the Women's Charter. But then they have realized that it is not enough. So that is why National Commission on Women, with the global governance and interconnectedness, came into Sri Lanka, because we also have to maintain such standards to safeguard women's and girls' rights and offer remedial action. That is what is important. Offer remedial action. Because it's not that you just say that safeguard the rights. I mean, if violated, or if it is about to violate, then what are the remedial actions? Which courts you can go to? Can you go to National Commission, or can you go to the ombuds? or for women's rights. So these are the ones that we are currently discussing, and currently it is been in place. The policy and the law is in place. It is the challenge of the new government and the new minister to establish these mechanisms and let it function. I mean, and when you say let it function, it has to be in a global standards, and also it has to be to ensure further equality between men and women, and also it is empowerment of women and girls on not only on these areas but also economic, social, and cultural development. Because as long as the woman or the girl is dependent, nothing you do matters, because they will go back to that man or the partner who is being there abusing you. And then I think finally we come to what can citizens do to advocate for stronger legal protections for women. This is, I think, just for you and me, for all of us. Although that I'm a lawyer, I don't practice law, but I do discuss these things with various platforms, networks, as to what we can do, where can we start, where can we go further, what extra mileage that we have to go, which communities that we need to focus more in order to protect protection for women with a stronger legal protection. So advocating and evidence building for law and policy reforms is one of the key for citizens to work on, because strong laws and government policies for prevention that offer a comprehensive framework, harmonize civil and criminal laws, and are proactive and binding on policy actors and statutory duty bearers are essential. So they have to work together. All these comprehensive frameworks, civil society, criminal law, civil law, all that has to work together. Then CSOs play a major role. They often involve CSOs pertaining for a shared advocacy agenda, because government cannot do it. I don't know whether you have heard, there are many, there are many campaigns the government have launched with the civil society support on women's violence against women. And if any one of you go passing the hospital, especially this Castle Street maternity hospital, there are some nice billboards saying that a small child was saying, telling father not to attack the mother, things like that. So creates that ambience for people to understand what does it mean. So women's voices are important, and also we need to advocate for that kind of an agenda. But also all this time, we have been focusing more on women's creating awareness or women's advocacy, but also we need to work with men. And I'm sure here that there are many men also listening, or the boys who are listening, so that you have a bigger role to play. And then the policy and advocacy. So there are policy frameworks established here in Sri Lanka. And then the committee, Ministry of Women's Affairs is there. So I think we are heading in a better way in terms of policy and advocacy. But also it is important to work on prevention, because prevention is better than cure. And prevention is much more important, because otherwise, that women gets abused on a like every minute there will be certain percentage of women in the society gets abused. So we need to speak up for them. We need to raise we need to raise voices, and we need to give the voice to the voiceless. So, and especially working on the areas, prohibition of early and forced marriages. I was doing a survey in area in Ratnapura, and there are lots of early marriages and forced marriages. So I think that is why most of these young women gets abused, and then also I mean, one thing that they get, once they get married, they get out of the house, so that there was some kind of a secure situation in the house. Now it's not there. and the men abuse them. So it's very tragic circumstances that the women are facing. So prohibition of early and forced marriages, we can speak about it. We can create awareness, and then equal property rights and proper education, employment, and also employability, like entrepreneurship development. And because not only that you do, because most of the women, when they have young children, they would like to do something at home and earn some living rather than going for a job. And then because they have to look after the children, and also they are the they do the house chores. And we still don't work with the boys and discussing about these shared house responsibilities, house chores responsibilities, and things like that. We have to discuss openly. And then girls and women's needs in humanitarian assistance. As I said, it is not necessarily only that one needs to look at in the peacetime, but also in the times of natural disasters or man-made disasters. And then access to reproductive health, because you can't allow women to keep on producing, and that access reproductive health and also comes with mental health is very important. And the other area that we need to also do is intervention. How do we intervene? Ending violence against women is everyone's business. But that doesn't mean when you see a man and a woman is fighting or something like that, or you hear the next door it's happening, that you can immediately can go and kind of hit the man or take the woman's side or take the woman out of that family. You can't do that. But then again, what you need to do is to collect evidence, and then take that evidence with the woman who is voiceless to the legal authorities, work with them, and so that they give that whole like secure situation. So listen to and believe survivors. I have heard many times when the survivors go and speak on behalf of of their experiences, some men or even women don't believe. They say no. I mean, they don't believe. And especially police, they just send them back home, say no. I mean, why can't a man, why can't they, what they say is, why can't a man hit a woman? I mean, they think that when you go marry, it's a license. And then cross-generation learning and teaching. That means that most of the what we have learned, what we have seen in our surveys and also our findings in our research work, is that most of the time men are prone to prone for SGBV is because they have seen their fathers doing it. And the girls are tolerating it because they have seen their mothers being tolerating, right? So therefore, it is important to have a cross-generational learning and teaching of what to do and not to do, and say no, right? And also enhance responses and services, because as I said, responses has to be quick and prompt, and these services has to be kind of unbiased and also with dignity. And when you go to get the services, sometimes the doctors abuse again, or the nurses shout at them, embarrass the girls or the women. So this has to be very much in a better environment. Better circumstances has to be created. And then also they understand the consent. We used to say that boys will be boys, or should we say that boys will be held accountable, as opposed to, boys will be boys. Can we just close the chapter, say, oh, boys will be boys, they were just bullying her? Or that we say boys will be held accountable. I think this is the trend in the world. Boys will be held accountable, and not anymore boys will be boys, and learn the signs of abuse and show help. Because sometimes the the victim will not say it, but if you are very close to your friends, your family, if you see any bruises, any marks of violence, you should act. The other thing is conversation. Speak up, stand against if you see something happening, and hold each other accountable. You are not alone. You tell the people, so you can speak with the others. So there are many methods that you can do on intervention, and also creating awareness about women's sexuality. You all may be hearing these, most of the time say why if a girl is wearing a short skirt, right? That amounts to abuse. So girls should not wear short skirts. I have heard, I am a Buddhist, and I have heard many Buddhist clergy saying these things. I mean, that's wrong, because your body is your body. What you need to do, you need to understand the cultural values, principles, and then the parents are there, the partner is there. So you should know one should know how to wear, what to wear. But that doesn't necessarily mean because of that, women's sexuality has been taken as a symbol of kind of creating abuses. And also, what is sexual violence? What is sexual violence is what somebody is committing against a woman, or it's that even any man or woman, like it can be your mother-in-law, and it can be even your husband. Those are like sexual violence, because mother-in-laws are also sometimes involved, and India has too many cases. In Sri Lanka, it is not many. So there are many examples like such violence. So how we work with that, and then who are the perpetrators? We need to work openly, because most of the cases what we have heard is perpetrator is either a teacher, or the father, or the close relative, or your husband, or your partner, or at times brothers. So we are very shy to speak up about these perpetrators, but it is very important that a perpetrator is being identified, and perpetrators are always there, and you don't have to be shy away with that. That is something that is important. So these are some of the ideas that I just wanted to throw to you all, and think of it, and also comes back and work on. And these are some of the areas that you can easily do research and contribute as young advocates, and young, maybe that you can also contribute towards policy development. So thank you very much for listening, and let's take some questions. Let's see. Or not only questions, but if you want to share some experiences, you can do that. If you have an opinion, you can also do that. Over to you. Yeah, I'm done with the presentation. So let's open the floor.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Dayani Panagada. So, ma'am, what I noted was one phrase that hit my head was prevention is better than cure. And you have mentioned something about cross-generational learning and teaching as well. And then I got the question, so how can we address these cultural and societal barriers? Like, it's obvious that most of the time the perpetrators are either the husband or the partner. It's more or less like there is a cultural and a societal barriers, a harmful norm that would try to make women very limited. So, how can we address this issue, which hinders the implementation of women's protection law?
I think that is where that we need to have this openness in the society. You're very right, because our society is such that we are a multilingual, multicultural society here in Sri Lanka, and certain cultures, they don't even speak at all about these issues. Whereas certain cultures, or maybe like, for example, urban communities speak about it, but rural communities hide the fact. And that earlier, like before the British came into Sri Lanka, it was about that the people who are very rich in the villages used to abuse all the women, And then the British came in, and then later on, one man, one woman, and then registration of marriage came into, and then the whole family value. So I'm not saying that that was right or the previous way of people behaving was wrong. I think it's about talking to the communities, because every community has the community leaders, like the school teachers, school principals, clergy, or the priest from all religions. I think it is important. We need to understand the fact that we respect women irrespective of their culture, irrespective of their, whether they are married or not. There is a certain principles that those principles which have been now in 1325 and UDHR and our constitution. So this legal framework has to be spoken to all these communities. It's a kind of a engagement, and that is the only way of prevention. Because all the other way I see is that naming and shaming. But in situations like this, naming and shaming is dangerous, because the women don't want to come forward. Even in the bus, when I was very young, I used to go in the bus. I did not have the car. And I know how much harassment I went through. But I was very silent even at that time. Only thing what I had was I had a safety pin. So whoever who comes closer to me and do various things, I used to pinch them with my safety pin. So that's how I protected myself. But I think nowadays these things are being spoken more, and there are certain ways that we can create that kind of an awareness. So it's not that easy, because people don't want to come openly discuss. But I think it's important that prevention can happen only if the communities are ready to speak. Both men and women are ready to speak. Not only women, or not only women's organizations on behalf of women, but everybody. And especially the school is a good platform, and mixed schools. I started my schooling at a mixed school. So I knew in such a school, it was I think easier for girls and boys to see what is right and what is wrong than in a school where it is gendered, like girls schools or boys schools. So yeah, difficult, but we have to start somewhere.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. So, with having the idea that naming and shaming is dangerous, with now we can open the floor to our Zoom audience. But before that, I would like to thank the audience who joined with us through YouTube. Now we will be stop streaming live, and we are opening the